diagnosed with a rare condition of having no womb when she was 19. She said the birth of her daughter, who she named Amy after her sister, was the greatest gift we could ever have asked for. GB News can reveal that hundreds of small boat migrants have crossed into UK waters this morning, with Border Force struggling to cope. More than 400 migrants are attempting to make the crossing, taking advantage of a short weather window after several days of poor weather. 3 small boats have already made it into UK waters. At least 3 more are currently in French waters, but making steady progress towards the UK side of the Channel. And the King and Queen have shared 3 new photographs marking their 20th wedding anniversary tomorrow. Charles and Camilla were pictured smiling soon after arriving in Rome for the start of a 4-day state visit, which will celebrate ties between the UK and Italy. The state visit was originally intended to include the Vatican, where the King had been due to attend a service in the Sistine Chapel, but that had been postponed because of the ill health of Pope Francis. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. Now, it's an amazing story, this. On the front page, it's a Daily Mail exclusive this morning. This is about a couple, Grace and Angus Davidson. And Grace was born with a condition which meant that she had no womb, but she had functioning ovaries. So 2 years ago, she had a transplant of her sister's uterus, her sister Amy, and now she's given birth to a baby that she's also called Amy. Now, the surgical team had to do both procedures. So if you imagine in one room, they've got the sister having her womb removed. Yeah. And in an adjacent room, they take that womb and they implant it then into Amy, who has had this lovely baby. We're going to be talking to the obstetrician who was there, who delivered this little much-loved, much-wanted baby. Bryony Jones, in the middle of that picture, is working actually in the hospital next door this morning. Lovely, isn't it? It's a really lovely story. It does raise ethical issues, of course. Yeah, but look, this was funded by a charity, but it was done in an NHS hospital. Look at all the number of... If you look, listening on the radio, there are probably 14 people in that photograph, NHS staff working on this delivery, and some people may say, actually, if you can't have a baby because you haven't got a womb, maybe go surrogate, maybe adopt. There's a big adoption crisis. We've got 100,000 kids rattling around the care system with no prospect of being adopted. And also, we heard Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, today saying this will end up on the NHS, and that will be vastly expensive. Now, Grace and Amy, so the mother and the sister, they had counselling before this treatment went on. Now, the surgery is gruelling. The stage 1 surgery is 8 hours and 12 minutes to remove the womb and to transplant it into Amy. Then you have the surgery, of course, to have the IVF. Yeah. Then they have IVF to implant the baby and the fetus. And then you have to have a caesarean section to deliver the baby, because obviously you can't have a normal vaginal birth because of the implanted uterus. And then when Amy has had another baby, hopefully, fingers crossed, she'd like to have another one, she will then have the uterus removed, because otherwise she'll be on immunosuppressants for the rest of her life. It is not an undertaking that is done lightly. I would have thought that is a traumatic thing to do to a body. Well, we're going to find out, aren't we, when we talk to the obstetrician. Now, Amy said, you know, it was very important. She said it was really important to her to carry her own baby. It must have been. If that was my daughter, would I have wanted her to go through this procedure? I don't think I would have, but I do respect that personal choice to want to make that decision. Because there could be complications. Risk to life. Yeah. There's risk to life to the mother. Well, there is risk to life to when you have a caesarean anyway, with risk, but also with a normal vaginal birth. So it's an interesting dilemma of risk versus reward. Obviously, for this family, it's all worked out brilliantly. It's happened here in the UK, and we're going to be talking, as we said, to the obstetrician who led that procedure. Yeah, and we wonder what you think about it. Perhaps you can tell us what you think. Where do we write to? Who do you write to? gbnews.com/your say. There we are. Now, it is... Tomorrow marks I can't believe 20 years already, the 20th wedding anniversary of our King and Queen Camilla. So they've shared new photographs, 3 of them, to mark this wedding anniversary. There they are. They are pictured smiling soon after arriving in Rome for the start of this 4-day state visit. They look lovely. It must be poignant as well, of course, given his cancer diagnosis.
Absolutely right, yeah. And in other royal news, the Duke of Sussex, that's Prince Harry, to most of us, has arrived at the Royal Courts of Justice in London. This is all over his latest court case over whether the taxpayer should be funding his security arrangements while visiting the UK.
Let's go to Cameron Walker, who joins us from Rome. Good morning, Cameron. I think we're going to see some live pictures of the King and Queen arriving. And Cameron, we'll get you to talk over these pictures when they do emerge. But Prince Harry has just arrived at the Royal Courts of Justice in London this morning. Remind us what that case is about.
Yes, I mean, what horrific timing, Bev. Just a couple of minutes, really, before we're expecting the King and Queen to arrive at the Quirinale Presidential Palace here in Rome. Prince Harry has arrived at the Royal Courts of Justice in London. This is really the last chance saloon for Prince Harry in his case against the Home Office. His security was downgraded when he stood back as a working royal back in 2020. He disagreed with that. He took the British government to court and, of course, lost that initial case. Now he's appealing it, and it appears that he wants to be there in person to look for judges, the High Court judges, directly in the eye to plead his case. I mean, on the one hand, many people would probably point out that, well, if you feel so scared that your security is so bad in the UK, why have you come across here to argue your case about security? But on the other, he insists that he does not feel safe bringing his family to the United Kingdom, particularly his wife Meghan and his 2 children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. So, I mean, we'll just have to see what the courts say on that one. But of course, it is horrific timing because now this is completely overshadowing the state visit of the King and Queen in Italy. It's a ceremonial arrival. The shots you're hopefully seeing on your screen now of the Guard of Honour lined up of all 3 Italian forces, the Army, the Air Force and the Navy. You can just about see in the foreground there the President of Italy, President Mattarella, and his daughter Laura, and we're expecting a joint flypast as well between the British RAF Red Arrows and the Frecce Tricolori, which is the equivalent of Red Arrows here in Italy, flying over the palace. So it is the kind of symbolism of the joint military operations between the UK and Italy, but nonetheless, I think the King and his staff may be a little bit miffed that Prince Harry has decided to slightly upstage his father here.
Cameron, Prince Harry would know better than anybody that there was a state visit, that it's his father's wedding anniversary to Camilla, tomorrow the 20th anniversary. He does not need to be there in court today. He wasn't there in previous court hearings. People will think he is deliberately trying to upstage the royal family yet again.
Well, I suppose on the one hand, Andrew, the date of the court case is set by the courts, but you're right, he doesn't absolutely need to be there. I suspect, that it probably didn't cross his mind, and if it did, I don't perhaps think that was going to stop him, but state visits, of course, are planned months in advance. But we know, don't we, that Prince Harry isn't really abreast of King Charles's diary. It's reported that he didn't find out that the King was in hospital a few weeks ago until he read it in the news himself, so he wasn't given any kind of heads up. And I think when he was given the news that his father had cancer, it was a very similar situation here. So clearly they're not on the best of speaking terms. But of course, I think the King's focus is going to be on the fact that it is his anniversary tomorrow with Queen Camilla, 20 years of happy marriage. You just saw from those 3 beautiful photographs taken by Chris Jackson in the gardens of the villa of the UK ambassador here to Italy, that they clearly are very much, part of a team. And I think Queen Camilla is his rock, really, particularly over this cancer diagnosis over the last year or so. And we are expecting them very shortly to arrive here, and they're going to be guests of honours at a state banquet tomorrow evening. But doesn't that just show the kind of workaholic nature of the King, Andrew, the fact that he's continuing to work on his 20th wedding anniversary?
Also, Cameron, there are issues. I mean, he is there at the request of the government, the Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary. They want him there. I think the Foreign Secretary, in fact, David Lammy, is there too, because they want support from Italy on Ukraine and also on efforts to tackle migration.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we know that Prime Minister Maloney and Prime Minister Keir Starmer have been in regular talks on tackling illegal migration. Foreign Secretary David Lammy is here at the Presidential Palace, and he is expected to take part in a meeting with the King and the President and his Italian counterparts a little bit later on, discussing, let's say, world affairs, because of course it is, although this, as I said, this state visit has been in the diary for months, clearly it's less than a week since President Trump imposed those tariffs on both the UK and the EU, which is going to affect Italian and British exports. So I suspect that's going to be on the agenda. But of course, King Charles is mindful that he very much stays out of politics. He essentially opens the door with his soft power to these tough political negotiations going on behind the scenes, while he takes part in all the pomp and pageantry that you're going to be seeing on your screens, and also all the ceremonial stuff that's kind of going on.
And I know it's been reported that he will not meet the Pope after all, because the Pope's obviously had health problems. There is some speculation today, Cameron, that actually if the Pope's health is a little better, and we saw him out in public for the first time at the weekend, that the King and Queen, or at least the King may have a private audience with the Pope.
Yes, that's certainly some speculation. Buckingham Palace sources are saying there are no plans for the King to meet the Pope. If you remember, this was meant to be 2 state visits. This was meant to be the Vatican state visit, where the King was going to meet the Pope today, and the Italian state visit, but it's just now one state visit. We believe the King is just arriving in the next 20 seconds or so. We can see the mounted cavalry here just entering the courtyard even of the Presidential Palace, and I suspect the royal car is directly behind them. But yes, there is some speculation just while we're waiting that the King may well meet the Pope. I suspect if it happens, it's going to be happening a little bit later on this week, because the King's diary, particularly for today and tomorrow, is incredibly packed here. And I suspect if it can happen, it will happen. We saw Pope Francis over the weekend in St. Peter's Square. He had an oxygen tube into his nose, and he was in a wheelchair, but nonetheless he was out and being seen in public and spoke to the crowds there. And of course, it would be a good opportunity for the King to meet the Pope, but we'll have to wait and see. Currently, as I said, there is no plans. I believe this is His Majesty the King just arriving.
If you're listening on the radio, there's the soldiers in ceremonial uniform on horses. This is a familiar scene for the King there, isn't it, really? But it's pomp and pageantry. They don't do it as well as we do in Britain, I've got to say.
Here we are.
So here's the car now.
Definitely not Andrew.
Yeah, no, they can't compete with that. Britain does it best. So he's about to get out the car. Here we go.
They do have the sunshine more reliable.
They do.
Red carpet is out.
There he is. You can just see the glimpse of the King. And presumably, Cameron, is he meeting the President right now, or does he meet the President when he gets inside?
Yes, I can watch him meeting the President as we speak, alongside his daughter, Laura. I can also tell you, because I've just been told, that the Queen's outfit, if you wanted to know, is a blue silk crepe dress and a coat by Fiona Clare, and she's wearing a diamond and sapphire brooch that once belonged to Queen Victoria. So there's a bit of trivia for you. So the King is about to be invited by, the King is about to be invited by the President's Mattarella to inspect this guard of honour inside the courtyard of the Quirinale Palace, and that's made up of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Carabinieri and Mounted Cavalleria. Out all the stops, Andrew, and we believe the national anthems are about to be played. The Union flag is currently being raised above the palace as well, to fly alongside the Italian flag. And the European Union flag as well, because there's 3 flagpoles on that turret. So there we are, both the British and national anthems being played here in the courtyard of the presidential palace. The King is now going to be invited by the President to inspect the Guard of Honour here, and this is described as a ceremonial welcome, symbolising the UK and Italy's joint defence cooperation. Of course, Britain and Italy, two NATO allies.
Cameron, make an observation. It's astonishing how close these photographers are getting to the King and President. I mean, they don't need to be that close. Back off. It would not happen in Britain. It just wouldn't.
I'm not sure quite who has the correct protocol here. Should the King be in front? Well, he certainly is now, as a head of state and a monarch here in Europe. The King, of course, is well used to inspecting guards of honour from his time in the armed forces, and of course as head of the British armed forces as well. Just walking down the red carpet now towards our position.
It's a very long red carpet.
And he will be going inside the palace very shortly onto the terrace to view the magnificent joint flypast by the Red Arrows and the Frecce Tricolori. And it's all about that soft power. David Lammy, MP, Foreign Secretary, already inside, and others ready to take part in political meetings. But I found this bit quite funny, Andrew and Bev. It's all becoming a little bit old-fashioned inside the building later on, because the President and the King are going to branch off to have these diplomatic meetings, official diplomatic meetings, whereas the Queen and Her Majesty the Queen, just walking past my position there. The Queen and the President's daughter, Laura Mattarelli, they are going to be viewing some tapestries and some antique books and speaking to staff who are setting up for the state's banquet. So a bit of a contrast there, a little bit old-fashioned perhaps, but nonetheless, it's soft diplomacy in action.
I'm sure she'll be endlessly fascinated by the tapestries, Cameron.
I'm sure she will be. She's also viewing the staterooms as well. But the King and Queen, we believe, are just about to pose for some photographs, and then if they're not already inside, they'll be heading inside very shortly to the presidential palace.
And on their 20th wedding anniversary tomorrow, Cameron,
fly past.
On their 20th wedding anniversary tomorrow, Cameron, they'll be working again tomorrow.
Yeah, they absolutely are. So the King will be holding a audience with Prime Minister Maloney. Of course, we know they've been working hard, the Prime Minister Maloney and Prime Minister even Keir Starmer, on tackling illegal migration. The King is also going to become the first British monarch in history to address a joint session of the Italian parliaments, so the Senate and the lower house as well. That's something that's never happened before, perhaps suggesting that Italian lawmakers do have huge respect for the British monarch 5 years after Brexit. And then, of course, the magnificent state banquets in the evening as well. So, yeah, they are still very much working hard. I suspect there will be something else that Buckingham Palace may pull out of their sleeve to signify the fact that it is their 20th wedding anniversary. But, of course, we got those 3 beautiful pictures yesterday taken in the garden of the UK ambassador's residence last night. So, I mean, perhaps there will be something for Wednesday morning as well. We'll have to wait and see. I was a bit surprised they were releasing it this morning or last night rather than on the anniversary itself, so which suggests to me there will be something else they are planning for the anniversary.
In his speech to the Parliament, Cameron, I wonder if there'll be a little bit of Italian in the King's speech. I remember when he talked to the German Parliament, if you remember, I think it was his first state visit as King, he did speak a little in German. That shouldn't be difficult for the King, bearing in mind the royal family's German heritage.
Yes, exactly. He certainly did speak a little bit in German, and here we are. I can hear the fly past in my ear, which presumably means you're about to see some shots on your television.
How extraordinary!
There we are, the magnificent red arrows, red, white, and royal blue smoke, accompanied by the Frecce Tricolori with their red, green, and white smoke. Of course, Royal Air Force and Italian Air Force working together, another symbol of military might of Italy and the UK working together. But yes, that is kind of the end of the ceremonial proceedings. But as you said, Andrew, tomorrow he will be speaking a little bit in Italian, we suspect. He did the same thing in Germany, he did the same thing in France. It's perhaps a hat-trick for him of first being monarch and addressing joint sessions of European parliaments 5 years after Brexit, of course, perhaps suggesting that we're on slightly better relations now than we were at the start of 2020.
Beautiful. It looks absolutely stunning, doesn't it? And how lovely.
Thank you, Cameron.
Cameron Walker is our royal correspondent who's with the King and Queen on the official state visit to Italy.
I've been watching the messages from our audience as that was happening. A lot of people saying how much they love King Charles and how much they dislike Harry. And why does it seem coincidental that every time there's a bad news story for Harry, it's on the same day that the royals
He is absolutely tone deaf, that young man. I mean,
Harry.
I've known for weeks that the King is going to be in Italy for his 20th wedding anniversary. It's not a secret. He is known. He does not need to be there today. He probably could have said, can we have the court case changed? If not, he doesn't have to be there. And there is a way of entering the royal courts. You didn't have to go to the front door.
Yeah. Katie's saying, I think King Charles will have hated all those photographers behaving like that. She spotted the same thing that you did.
It was very odd.
Right. Yeah, up close. Don't forget, this morning we're still going to be talking to the obstetrician who delivered that miracle baby on the front page of the Daily Mail this morning. This is a couple who had a womb transplant and were able to give birth. They were transplanted the womb from their sister and now have a little girl, the first to have happened in the UK. Incredible medical advance or an ethical dilemma on which NHS money shouldn't be spent. Don't go anywhere.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Lanarkshire, the A726 is closed each way northwest to Straven because of a gas leak. In Lincolnshire, the A15 is closed each way between Welton Cliff and Ingham after an accident. On the M4 in Berkshire, the inside lane's closed eastbound. There's a breakdown between junctions 10 and 8-9 from Wokingham to Maidenhead. In West Sussex, the A23 is closed northbound from Pikeham to the Albourne junction for repairs after a fuel spill yesterday, causing queues heading away from Brighton. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken down between junctions 8 and 9 towards Fareham, causing delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For a chance to win a motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10 o'clock on Tuesday the 8th of April, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
It's being described as a womb transplant miracle. Amy Davidson has made history by being the first baby born by a transplant womb in the UK. And in a world exclusive, we're going to be speaking to the woman who delivered her. The new mother, Grace Davidson, is over the moon.
Hope is so important.
hope for this, like that this could be a realistic option for them perhaps, and just how much it's given me. I would just hopefully share what it's been like for me.
Beside her, that was her sister Amy, who donated her uterus to her. Now, breaking news, Prince Harry is back in the UK, appealing the government's decision to scrap security for his family here. Can't be that dangerous, can it, if he's here?
Quite. And upstaging his father on the state visit to Italy, of course. The global market turmoil continues. The trade war between China and America has escalated, but we're going to be examining what impact it's going to have here in Britain.
And Birmingham, what a mess. It is drowning in rubbish. The government is facing calls to bring in the army now as the bin worker strike enters its second month. If you live there, what's it like?
And the King and Queen have shared 3 new photographs to mark their 20th wedding anniversary tomorrow, which they're going to spend on the 3rd day of their state visit to Italy.
And Boris Johnson's wife has posted this video on social media. He is visiting a wildlife park in Texas when an ostrich, clearly a very good judge of character, chooses to attack him. Here it is.
Why didn't he close the window? You're in a safari park. Meghan's latest podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder. I bet you can't wait. It's out today. Brenda in Bristol, what do you think?
Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this.
You feel sorry for the ostrich?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I wish I was the ostrich. But it's interesting because the social media that Carrie, his wife, posts, it always has the children who have very distinctive Johnson.
That could only be Boris's son, couldn't it?
They all have that. They've got 3, haven't they? 3 very little ones.
Yeah.
They've all got that distinctive blonde hair, and she always films them from behind, so you never see their faces. But she's quite open on Instagram about where they go, what they do. Clearly a family holiday.
Somewhere in America.
Yeah.
But I was told safari park, you keep the window closed.
No, well, yes, you're right.
Gibbons, monkeys.
We're talking about a man whose judgment may not always be on.
And of course, don't forget we have this world exclusive. We've got the interview with the obstetrician who delivered the miracle baby, the woman who had a womb transplant from her sister, and she's got a little baby called Amy.
And the transplant was conducted by a female surgeon.
Yeah.
The baby was delivered by a female obstetrician surgeon that we're going to have in the audience. Is it a good day for women? Is it a good story for women? There are ethical dilemmas which are raised by this, of course. We're going to be getting into all of that. First, the very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your headlines. Donald Trump has called for calm despite trillions of dollars being wiped from global markets by his tariffs. The US president urged his critics to not be a panicking, coining a new phrase which he describes as based on weak and stupid people. It comes as European markets opened higher, with London's FTSE 100 rising in the first few minutes of trading this morning after several days of heavy losses. Meanwhile, China has vowed to fight to the end in response to Donald Trump's threat of an additional 50% tariff on Chinese imports. Overnight, the US president further escalated his rhetoric on trade with Beijing and the EU over tariffs.
With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. The European Union's been very bad to us. They don't take our cars, like Japan in that sense. They don't take our agricultural product. They don't take anything practically.
But Beijing's Commerce Ministry said it would never accept the blackmail nature of the US. Meanwhile, Health Secretary Wes Streeting has told GB News the Prime Minister is working to secure an economic partnership with the US to remove trade barriers.
Whether or not we are directly involved, we will be indirectly impacted And that's why the Prime Minister's sought to do three things. Firstly is not only to make sure we're at the best end of the US tariffs already announced, but to make sure that we secure an economic partnership with the United States to further remove trade barriers. Secondly, to try and remove trade barriers with other countries, other trading partners across Europe, around the world, so that Britain stands for free trade and open trade. And thirdly, to make sure we're providing support for British industry.
But Shadow Energy Minister Andrew Bowie says he isn't confident in the Prime Minister's ability.
We are seeing an escalation in tensions between the US and indeed other trading partners, in particular, as you referenced, China. What's really important for the UK is that we don't get drawn into this tit-for-tat trade war, that cool heads prevail, and we continue to negotiate with the United States to try and see a reduction in the 10% tariff rate that has been imposed on us. I'm afraid I don't have much faith in Keir Starmer's ability to negotiate a reduction from that rate. However, I do think that the direction of travel from the government is the correct one, and they have our support in doing so.
In other news now, a baby girl has become the first child in the UK to be born to a mother from a womb transplant. 36-year-old Grace Davidson received the transplant in 2023 from her older sister Amy and fell pregnant with her miracle baby shortly after. Davidson, an NHS dietitian from North London, was diagnosed with a rare condition of having no womb when she was 19. She said the birth of her daughter, who she's named Amy after her sister, was the greatest gift we could ever have asked for. GB News can reveal that hundreds of small boat migrants have crossed into UK waters this morning, with the border force struggling to cope. More than 400 migrants are attempting to make the crossing, taking advantage of a short weather window after several days of poor weather. 3 small boats have already made it to UK waters. At least 3 more are currently in French waters, but making steady progress towards the UK side of the Channel. Now, the Duke of Sussex has arrived at the Royal Courts of Justice in London, where his appeal against a High Court ruling on his UK security level is due to begin. Prince Harry is challenging a 2020 Home Office decision, reducing his taxpayer-funded protection after stepping back as a full-time royal. Last February, a High Court judge upheld the decision, finding it rational. Harry's team argues he was unfairly treated, lacking proper risk analysis. And the King and Queen have arrived at Quirinal Palace to meet the Italian Prime Minister. Charles and Camilla are in Rome for the start of a 4-day state visit, which will celebrate ties between the UK and Italy. The state visit was originally intended to include the Vatican, where the King had been due to attend a service in the Sistine Chapel, but that had been postponed because of the ill health of Pope Francis. Earlier, the King and Queen shared 3 new photographs marking their 20th wedding anniversary tomorrow. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Space Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. We are just waiting for the obstetrician who's going to be entering the studio in just a moment, who is responsible for the antenatal care and the delivery of this UK first, this baby that was born to a woman who had a womb transplanted from her sister. She had functioning ovaries, but she had no uterus from birth. Does it give hope to women who are in a similar position? There are about 15,000 women in the UK apparently who have no functioning uterus to carry their own baby, but of course it does raise ethical dilemmas. Right, a few of you getting in touch at home. Jocelyn says that Birmingham rubbish. There are 461,000 households in Birmingham, and around 115,000 are eligible for council tax support, and of those, around 75,000 households pay no council tax at all.
Well, wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people stop paying it. I'm not saying they should, because we don't advocate law breaking here, but if you're not getting your rubbish collected and the city's become a health hazard, it's amazing that apparently the city centre, so when you get off the train in Birmingham New Street, you wouldn't know there's a rubbish strike, but get out beyond the main centre, then it's carnage.
Well, some people, Morning Gem, has pointed out who is leaving sofas and carpets out for the dustbin men. Because what's basically happened here, because the wheelie bins and all the household refuse isn't getting collected or recycled. People are going, oh, brilliant.
Well, they're exploiting it.
Stick my mattress out on the street.
Exactly what they're doing.
Now I'll put me broken microwave.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Isn't that horrific?
Yeah, they're adding to the chaos. They're thinking, it's chaos already, what a bit more chaos.
Unbelievable.
Really irresponsible.
Morning Jack says that flyover was fantastic. Why is the Queen holding on to her handbag?
Well, do you want somebody else to carry it for them?
I don't know. I didn't notice that, Jack.
They do have flunkies doing a lot for them, but I think she can manage her own. The Queen always had a handbag. Always. The late Queen.
Oh, always. Until that photo, do you remember where Zara Phillips' little girl held the handbag?
Yes, that's right.
There was that brilliant shot with the Queen with all the grandchildren, and Mike Tyndall and Zara Phillips' little girl, who is called Mia.
Yeah.
She picked up the handbag and she stood there with the handbag in that picture. She looks like a proper character.
Yeah, we're like her mother.
Brilliant. Oh, just like her mother. And Jack has also said, get those cameras out of King Charles's face, those rude Italians. And then they said, no, the disastrous Lammy is inside. Why have they let him go? And then somebody else saying, doesn't the Queen have a handbag carrier?
Do you know Theresa May, when she was Prime Minister, you rarely saw her with a handbag because she didn't want comparisons with Mrs Thatcher.
Is that right?
So you rarely saw the handbag, and she'd have a little clutch bag, and often a flunky would be carrying it for her. She absolutely was paranoid about comparisons with Mrs Thatcher, for good reason, because she was no Maggie Thatcher.
Well, I was going to say it's not a terrible comparison, is it? Unless they say you compare unfavourably, then maybe it's not so good. Half is the working name on here, say that the womb transplant was charity funded. It was on this occasion.
It was.
But they say that they were shocked to see all the NHS staff employed. Was it an NHS hospital? Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Charlotte's down the road. In my opinion, he or she says this whole story is troublesome when there are many operations and treatment is delayed. And my thoughts also go out to the children who would have otherwise been adopted. If this procedure becomes the norm, where will it all end? Well, it raises big questions about the purpose of medicine and improving people's well-being.
Just for information, there were 16 people in the operating theatre delivering that child. 16.
Do you know that, but how many do you think there are at a normal caesarean? 12?
Yeah.
Every caesarean section has 12 people in it, which is remarkable.
It is.
And the transplant had 30 people there. That's where it's expensive.
Really expensive. Now, GB News can reveal, we will get back to that story, GB News can reveal that hundreds of small boat migrants are currently crossing the channel. With the details, of course, we're joined by our GB News Home Security Editor, Mark White. Good weather, over they come.
Yeah, but this is remarkable because we only have a very short window, less than 8 hours, of good weather. It's been bad, really, since last Friday.
What, too windy?
Yeah. And it's just calmed down enough to allow the boats to cross. So the people smugglers, true to form, have shoved these boats out from the coast of France. And in such numbers that it's actually tied up every French maritime patrol and every British patrol in dealing with this surge in numbers. It's estimated that about 400 at least are crossing today. Now, if that's confirmed, once we get the numbers, we'll be able to confirm that. But that will take the number who've crossed this year already to more than 7,000. So record arrivals this year under Labour. And of course, we remember that the avowed aim of this Labour government is to smash the gangs. But clearly, it's not working. Sources within government have said, well, you know, we've had record numbers of days in which we've had good weather this year. But actually, if you had a policy, as they tell us, of smashing the gangs, and they've been trumpeting the successes, the arrests they've made, it wouldn't matter whether you had good days or bad days. If they were dismantling the gangs, the numbers would be down.
Now, we were told in the last week by the Home Secretary that the law is changing in France so that the French police can actually turn the boats back when they're in French water. So that law hasn't changed yet. Does it have to be an act of Parliament in France? If so, that could take months, if not years, Mark.
Well, we're told it's going to take a while because they have to be trained in what is potentially a risky strategy, because you've got migrants out in the water, even if they're only waist deep. In trying to push them back, they will fight back because they already fight with the police on the beaches. When the police have adopted a tactic of going up and puncturing the small boats before they get in the water, that causes some significant violence, and police officers have been quite badly injured by frustrated migrants there. So there is no doubt, I think this tactic, when they enact it, will be controversial and potentially violent. But it's only ever really going to get to a fraction of the boats that come across. There's more than 70 miles of coastline that the migrants set off from. You would need many, many thousands of police to adequately patrol that coastline. And they don't have that, despite the £500 million that we're giving to the French authorities.
I was going to say, do we get value for money from that money? We just don't.
Well, I think you could argue quite rightly that probably we don't, because they stop a fraction of the boats, but we're still seeing record numbers crossing, and we're at record numbers again this year. It looks like we are going to surpass the 36,800 that arrived last year by the end of this year. The way it's going, we're already about 26-27% ahead of where we were at this time last year.
Annunciata Rees-Mogg was in the studio with us yesterday, Mark, talking about this issue. And I said, are we not being honest about the fact that there are vested interests in this country, particularly for massive corporations that want cheap labour, for whom thousands of young working-age men coming into the country is actually something that they want? Well, there isn't the will. If we wanted to stop this, we could. There isn't the will.
I think there's certainly vested interests that want migrants across, not necessarily crossing illegally like this, but they do want mass migration to, yes, feed the cheap labour. That's not to say that they want to see illegal and dangerous crossings like this. But the fact is they will come. The biggest pull factor of all for these migrants coming, forget all the claims that it's about the luxurious hotel. They're only ever in hotels usually for weeks or, you know, a small number of months, some longer, but the vast majority then move on to social housing. It's all about the fact that if you come across by a small boat, you're very unlikely ever to be returned to your home country.
Which is deeply depressing. Mark White, thank you for that. Now, still ahead, the founder of X, Elon Musk, hits out at prison chiefs for the treatment of Lucy Connolly, the mother jailed for 31 months in this country for inciting racial hatred after the Southport disturbances.
But up next as well, the trade war between China and America is escalating. We're going to look at the impact it's going to have on Britain. This is Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
4.2 million people in this country are living in hygiene poverty. That means they are having to daily make a choice between putting food on the table for themselves and their family, paying the rent, paying their bills, and buying the basic everyday essentials we all rely on.
And there must be such a stigma attached to, well, there is, we know that, to hygiene as well, because this isn't talked about. I mean, we're talking here this morning, 1 in 12 British people have to make a decision between eating and washing, but we never hear about that, do we? It's not spoken about.
You're absolutely right. We have, you know, scarily normalised the conversation about food poverty and fuel poverty in this country. And what my charity, the Hygiene Bank, wants to do is to take one step on that road to ending hygiene poverty by abolishing VAT on soap, treating it as the basic staple that we all, you know, that we all need every day. It's the first line of defence against illness and disease. Helps to keep us all safe.
And it's a confidence thing as well, isn't it? If people are really struggling, that can affect your confidence and mental health and all the rest of it. But if you also know there's even the slight possibility of not smelling fresh, for example, but I mean that can totally destroy you in a workplace.
Completely, you know, and we hear every day about children who are bullied in school or who are not going to school because their uniform isn't clean or they feel stinky. They're being bullied by their peers. We know that 13% of people living in hygiene poverty have avoided work for exactly that reason. 9% of people have avoided going to a job interview, and that's so wrong because it is trapping you in your difficulties. Hygiene poverty is limiting life chances chances, it's blocking opportunities, it's stopping people find a way out of the hard times they find themselves in. And the thing that I always remind myself is that we're all actually only one step away from this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10:20 Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We've got the panel here. We've got senior commentator Nigel Nelson. And a first for us, the former Foreign Office Minister, Mark Field, who is, of course, the author of the book, The End of an Era. Mark, are we at the end of an era?
It does seem like it, doesn't it? With all
what's
that's
happening in the
going on,
United States,
it's
globalisation,
it's a weird
tariffs.
time. I mean, obviously, I think all of us believe in the idea of free trade. I mean, classic economics of David Ricardo with comparative advantage. The only thing I would say, all the furore we've been hearing in the last 2 or 3 days about, is Trump mad? What's going on? Is he going to have a U-turn? Just think through. This might work, or it might work at least as far as the United States are concerned. It might bring in quite a lot of money, which will help reduce their deficit.
Where will the money come from?
Well, I mean, just from the tariffs. I mean, they will be able to get goods. Of course, one has to remember with America, it's a huge economy and a self-contained economy to a large extent. Only about 10% of their economy depends upon exports. So it's not really going to be something that is going to be necessarily a major issue that will impact in the US. The other factor, of course, is you may see from Trump's perspective that he's got the rest of the world where he wants them. It's divide and rule. I mean, dare I say it, we in the British Empire in the 18th and 19th century, that's how we made our name, dividing and ruling when Britain did rule the waves. And that, I think, is one of the bigger issues that no one is really focusing on, that in a couple of years' time, it might well be that the shock system, the medicine, the harsh medicine to the US economy turns round, and in a couple of years' time, Americans think, actually, Trump's done the right thing.
And the debt levels in America, we think are bad here. Is it 36 trillion or something?
You're absolutely
eye-watering.
No, Andrew, you're absolutely right, and it is pretty bad here. We are very dependent. We have had a trade deficit for many years, which is why we've got a debt of about £3 trillion, but it's 36 trillion and rising. And the problem is that who is buying up all those bonds? And it's China. Not just China, but China, the Middle East, other relatively wealthy countries who are not consuming in the way, or over-consuming in the way that we are in the West. And that's the vulnerability, I think, about where this all goes, that actually, if you really wanted to retaliate from China's perspective, one way they would do it is to say, hang on, why do we put up with the idea of America getting away with borrowing all this money? And they can do so because, of course, they have the only a reserve currency in the world. And I just wonder, I mean, it's beginning to get a little bit more traction with some economists, the idea that maybe we'll go back to a gold standard that will be promoted by those people who hold the gold, the Chinese, the Russians, the countries in the Middle East. So I think we're in fascinating time, and it's, I'm afraid, I'd say to all of your viewers, we're at a very, very early stage of all of this. This is going to play out for many more months and years, and there'll be a lot of uncertainty. And it's bad news for the UK, because I mean, we need to see growth. We actually really need to see reductions in interest rates. And
that will come now.
Well, all the arguments are that a lot of what's happening with tariffs will be inflationary, which means that a genuinely independent Bank of England would think twice about reducing interest rates. We'll see how it plays out.
There might, Nigel, have been a few billionaires and millionaires that woke up with their stocks being worth a little less this morning. But if that eventually translates into the hands of the working person, let's call them that, in America, because industry gets a boost, not necessarily a bad thing, is it?
Well, the whole, if Mark is right, there are a number of things that might happen. Gold, for instance, at the moment is at a record level, so people are putting their money into gold. Is that a good thing? Probably not.
It seems like a safe haven, but as you say, at $3,000
$3,500 now. Anyway, but if you listen to what they're saying in America, the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, America's largest bank, the head of the Federal Reserve, they're predicting the inflationary consequences, certainly lower growth, possibly a recession, maybe already in recession. So as far as America's concerned, this is actually bad news. It's bad news for the rest of the world because it could throw us into a global recession. It's certainly knocked Britain off our economic direction.
So, and yet the response from the Prime Minister in that speech yesterday, very carefully staged managed tonight, Jaguar Land Rover, which of course has stopped their exports already to the United States because of the 25% tariff, fiddling around with dates about when we can and can't transition from petrol and gas to some form of electric cars. Pretty small beer response and something to do with the tech industry. Where's the big... Gordon Brown in 2008, he convened the G20, he had solutions...
Yeah, he got obsessed by electric cars, if you remember.
I do, but I mean, there seemed there was a narrative coming out of them. There doesn't appear to be anything.
Well, I mean, certainly that's what the car industry is saying, that this was small beer, it's not enough, that that basically they want all those restrictions that they're facing on electric cars completely taken off. So, in other words, they don't get fined for not selling enough. And
just scrap net zero altogether, Nigel.
Well, no.
Here we go. Here we go.
We probably won't hit net zero. Trump has probably put it back by about 10 years anyway. But we must still aim for it. Look, it was the hottest year ever last year, 2024. CO2 emissions hit 50% for the first time, 50% above industrialised levels.
Probably
we are
thanks
moving
to
in the wrong
China
direction.
and to India and all the other countries that are continuing to grow. Not because we are rinsing out blooming baked bean cans and putting them in our recycling boxes. Like, we are making no impact in terms of how we're changing the planet.
There is a historical bit here that we are still the world's fourth largest polluter. If you take pollution cumulatively since the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
So we have a moral...
That was a long time ago, Nigel.
I know, but what you're saying is let's forget about what we did in the past.
Yes,
and only concentrate on what we're doing now.
Do we not need a big bang sort of solution, Mark, of some description, or at least an idea that they're thinking about it?
On net zero or more?
No, on what's happening with it across the pond.
I think it's very... Listen, you rightly pointed out, and give some credit to Gordon Brown, and I do actually in my book.
You do?
As a backbench Tory MP, as I was at the time, I saw Brown and Darling back in 2009 when they did convene the London set up to really save the financial markets, and we were there. The other thing, of course, was there was a much more united front. It wasn't just Western countries, but it was China, India, other developing economies. They all bought into what needed to be done after the financial crisis had hit. There isn't that sense of global unity today. And let's be brutally honest, Donald Trump is not the man who could lead from the front. I mean, he is taking a very, America First view, which, incidentally, I mean, it is worth saying, America First has been a watchword of many American presidents going back to his hero, William McKinley, at the turn of the 20th century. But what is different now is the blatantness with which they're pushing ahead with those policies. So I don't see how there could be any convening. Keir Starmer or others might want to try and do something, but essentially you bring forward a very small group of the willing. The truth is, this is an issue that needs to be dealt with predominantly by the big two, the US and China, and then we've got, again, developing countries like India, Japan, other developing countries. I mean, big players in the international world who have a very different...
So we're a bit player, really.
Well, we are, and that's, again, part of the theme that
your book.
That I do say. And that's not... I love this country. I'm very proud of being British, but we have to get away from some of the exceptionalism. We're an important country, but we are a medium-sized European nation with a fantastic capital city, with a great history, with much that we can add. But I think we need to recognise that there are also limitations for any Prime Minister.
Nigel, let's just briefly touch on this. Grandparents being afraid to say no to childcare. What's this story about?
Grandpa?
Yes, indeed. It's about 2 million grandparents who are denied any contact with their grandchildren. And so there's various moves about what you might be able to do about this. The question is, what can you do about it? Most of this is down to family fallout, often to do with a remarriage, and so whoever the new partner is coming in doesn't get on with the mother-in-law or father-in-law. I mean, 80% of grandchildren do some childcare, so it sounds like the majority of grandparents have access to the kids, but 2 million don't. They want to get access. The only way of doing it is through the court. Terribly expensive and time-consuming.
It would be a fundamental shift, though, wouldn't it, Mark, for the idea that the grandparent has a right to the child as much as the parent? It worries me a little bit.
Well, I think, actually, what the courts have tended to say is that the child has a right to see their natural family. Parents, obviously, particularly when there's been a very acrimonious divorce, sometimes when you're in the hands of one parent, but you still have a right to see other relatives, and that applies to a certain extent, albeit at a looser extent, to grandchildren. I think it's what's very sad here is, I think as Nigel's alluded to, for 95% of families, I'm sure that there are very well-worked arrangements. You don't need to have other authorities getting involved. And I'm just slightly uneasy with the idea that we have laws and we have, local authorities imposing their will on either grandparents or on children in this way. So I think we've got to tread very carefully with any changes that take place with rules and regulations.
I can't imagine a scenario in which I would ever ban my children from seeing their grandparents. It's just the most awful collapse of relationships.
I just say it just shows how poisonous some relationships become.
Doesn't it? Right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Nigel and Mark. And talking of babies, we're going to be talking after the news to the obstetrician, the woman who cared for this baby that's on the front page of the papers today and who also delivered that baby. She's going to be here in just a second after your news with Sophia.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Good morning. Your headlines at 10:31. Donald Trump has called for calm despite trillions of dollars being wiped from global markets by his tariffs. The US president urged his critics to not be a panican, coining a new phrase which he describes as based on weak and stupid people. It comes as European markets opened higher, with London's FTSE 100 rising in the first few minutes of trading this morning after several days of heavy losses. Meanwhile, China has vowed to fight to the end in response to Donald Trump's threat of an additional 50% tariff on Chinese imports. Overnight, the US president further escalated his rhetoric on trade with Beijing and the EU over tariffs.
With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. The European Union's been very bad to us. They don't take our cars, like Japan in that sense. They don't take our agricultural product. They don't take anything practically.
But Beijing's Commerce Ministry said it would never accept the blackmail nature of the US. In other news, a baby girl has become the first child in the UK to be born to a mother from a womb transplant. 36-year-old Grace Davidson received the transplant in 2023 from her older sister Amy and fell pregnant with her miracle baby shortly after. Davidson, an NHS dietitian from North London, was diagnosed with a rare condition of having no womb when she was just 19. She said the birth of her daughter, who she named Amy after her sister, was the greatest gift we could ever have asked for. The Duke of Sussex has arrived at the Royal Courts of Justice in London, where his appeal against a High Court ruling on his UK security level is due to begin. Prince Harry is challenging a 2020 Home Office decision reducing his taxpayer-funded protection after stepping back as a full-time royal. Last February, a High Court judge upheld the decision, finding it rational. And now we can take you live across to the Royal Courts of Justice, where a judge is hearing Prince Harry's court appeal over the government's decision to scrap his security.
Stop the live stream on which there is a delay, and so no harm will be done, provided you get your point across within 90 seconds. And then we can decide what to do in the particular circumstances, rather than having a particular plan in every case. As far as the court is concerned, we're not really very keen to distinguish between particular levels of confidentiality. We note that in the bundles there are all sorts of levels of confidentiality. I think we'll just have one level of confidentiality, namely confidential and open. We accept, though, that some aspects of the evidence in this case cannot be made public appropriately, and that's why part of the hearing needs to be in private. But that does not detract from the fundamental principle that court hearings in this country are held in public, and we should like to see as much as possible of the legal and factual argument undertaken in open session, with suitable caution being exercised by the advocates to ensure that confidential material is not disclosed. I just wanted to be clear before we start about the importance of the open justice principle.
I'm very grateful, my Lord.
Good.
In terms of the structure of my submissions, I'm going to start, first of all, with the relevant legal principles and the case law. At the end of that section, I will address the respondent's notice and the points of law raised by it. I'm then going to address the grounds of appeal in the following order. First of all, ground 1A, and then I'm going to take 1B and C together, and then 1D and 2 together. My Lords, before turning to the law, could I make 7 introductory points? The first is to identify some common ground. It is common ground that when Ravek made...
And if you want to keep up to date with all the latest on Prince Harry's court appeal, you can scan the QR code on your screen now or head to GB News 2 on YouTube. And the King and Queen have arrived at Quirinal Palace to meet the Italian Prime Minister. Charles and Camilla are in Rome for the start of a 4-day state visit, which will celebrate ties between the UK and Italy. The state visit was originally intended to include the Vatican, where the King had been due to attend a service in the Sistine Chapel, but that had been postponed because of the ill health of Pope Francis. Earlier, the King and Queen shared 3 new photographs marking their 20th wedding anniversary tomorrow. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2734 and €1.1659. The price of gold is £2,357 and 18 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,871 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We are going to be talking to the obstetrician in just a moment who delivered this miracle baby, but let's now cross to the Royal Courts of Justice, where a judge is hearing Prince Harry's court appeal over the government's decision to scrap his security.
The royal family. The appellant's case is that he should be considered under the terms of reference and subject to the same process as any other individual being considered for protective security by Ravek, unless there is a cogent reason to the contrary. Second, it follows from this that the core question raised by this appeal is whether Ravek has given a clear, logical and convincing reason for departing from its terms of reference and failing to do an RMB for the appellant. The answer to that question is no. Third, the judge's starting point for that good reason question, as I will call it for shorthand, was that the RMB assessment is optional or discretionary. That is wrong. And that fundamental error of interpretation then completely tainted his analysis on good reason. Contrary to the judge's analysis, the RMB assessment is a key and crucial feature of the Ravek process. The requirement to undertake the RMB is expressed, as we will see, in clear and unqualified words in the terms of reference. And we know that there are very good reasons for that requirement, and we know it because of what Ravek's own documents and Ravek's own witnesses say about the distinct expertise of the RMB. Fourth, whilst it is right to acknowledge that Ravek has expertise in relation to matters of protective security, the nature of the issues raised by this case do not require the court to defer to Ravek. There is no separation of powers issue here, nothing that is beyond the court's institutional competence. The judge wrongly deferred to Ravek, and deference is at the heart of the respondent's resistance to this appeal. That is illustrated by Ravek's contention that the starting point for interpreting the terms of reference is a presumption that Ravek knows best. That the court should accept Ravek's understanding of its processes, even when that understanding does not match the words on the page or what Ravek does in practice for others. That is what the judge did, and he made a mistake when he did so. Fifth, Ravek also contends, by its respondent's notice, that the court should not look to see whether Ravek had a good reason, but that it should apply far less scrutiny and just ask whether Ravek's decision was unreasonable. The judge rightly rejected this legal submission, but he did make another legal mistake. And that mistake was to ask whether there was a good reason for Ravek's approach when he should have gone further. He should have applied the test of cogency, and he should therefore have intensely scrutinized Ravek's decision by asking whether the reason relied on was clear, logical, and convincing. Sixth, had the judge done that, he would have concluded that Ravek's reason for not doing an RMB for the appellant doesn't stack up, especially when one looks at what Ravek has done for other people. The lack of scrutiny led to the judge wrongly accepting Ravek's evidence, and that evidence says that a so-called bespoke process makes much more sense for the appellant than the RMB. My lords, that evidence has not come from the RMB, and it doesn't make sense when one considers in detail the expert analysis that the RMB assessment involves. It is impossible to speculate on whether the appellant would be in the same position had he been given the benefit of the process which Ravek's terms of reference mean and which Ravek has given to others. The final point is that the failure to do an RMB for the appellant means that Ravek did not have the expert analysis that it needed in order to consider whether or not the appellant should be treated similarly to those in the other VIP category, or OVC as I will call it. And Ravek did not make a reasonable decision because the appellant's position is analogous to those in that OBC category. Had the judge properly evaluated the evidence, he would have come to that conclusion. With that introduction, I want to turn to the relevant legal principles and the case law. There are 6 key legal propositions that are relevant on this appeal. The first 2 relate to good reason, the third to deference, the fourth to both good reason and interpretation, and the last 2 to policy interpretation. I'm going to just start, my lords, by identifying those propositions and giving you the references to the authorities in support.
If you would like to keep up to date with all the latest on Prince Harry's court appeal, you can scan the QR code on your screen now or head to GBN2 on YouTube.
Now, this is the world exclusive. We've been trading all morning because we are joined by the consultant obstetrician, Bryony Jones.
And Bryony, of course, is the woman behind. I'm not going to shy away from this, Bryony. You have played such a significant part in this story, which is on the front page of the papers today. You're working this morning, working as normal, gone back to work. But tell us, this couple came to you or had the transplant and you were brought in to be the obstetrician to lead their care. Why was this case so special?
Good morning, Bev.
Morning.
No, this was an honour and a privilege to be part of this amazing team that have made this amazing pregnancy and had this lovely baby Amy, brought baby Amy into the world. It's a difficult journey, and actually I've been part of the team which precedes the pregnancy, so it's really important that there's a whole team behind making sure that the transplant is safe, that the patient remains safe whilst they're trying to get pregnant, and obviously once they're pregnant, looking after the pregnancy and monitoring both the mum and the baby.
And so you delivered this baby by caesarean section. Just explain to us why she would have to be born by caesarean.
So, because of the uterine transplant, it's really important that the woman doesn't experience any contractions because that could jeopardise the transplant, the blood supply to the womb. And so the only way of delivering the baby safely is by caesarean section.
Because Amy, the mother, Grace, was born with ovaries but no womb. So this baby is biologically hers using her own eggs and her husband's sperm.
That's right.
How is it different as a carer of this couple to manage that pregnancy journey with them compared to a normal couple, if you like?
There are lots of women who have complicated pregnancies. So clearly, as doctors, many obstetricians have experience in looking after complexity, and our job is to keep mums and babies safe. Clearly, this is the first time we've looked after a woman who's had a transplant. But a lot of the same principles apply, and there's a whole team behind me ensuring that both the mum and the baby were safe and monitored throughout the pregnancy. But yes, it was joyous. It's an incredible opportunity. It was deeply rewarding and an absolute joy to be part of the team.
How nervous were you that it was all going to work out OK? Because this is a major step. That's why it's international news. It's on every front page. We're all talking about it. Because firstly, you've got to remove the womb from her sister, big surgery, then you've got to be implanted in the mum, and then you've got the caesarean. I mean, big surgical steps.
I guess so, perhaps naively, you look after her as you would do anyone else. I mean, I think you've just got to look at the medical issues, you're caring for the patient, you're doing the things that are needed. The day was special. It felt special because it was the accumulation of years of work from the Womb Transplant UK team, and I was incredibly honoured to be part of that team. The surgery was complex, but actually it had a really good outcome, and it was a great experience. I have to say, I'm going to admit, a little bit of a watery eye looking at the baby being held by the mummy afterwards.
There were 16 of you in that surgery. Was there quite a lot of people crying?
I think we all held it together. I think there was a lot of joy. There was a lot of joy, and remembering that it was a special day for us, but it was a super special day for Grace and her baby, and it was the birth of their beautiful baby, and so we were trying to keep that as normal as a special for them.
Now, critics or cynics or sceptics might say, well, this couple could have adopted a baby or they could have used a surrogate. Why would she put her own health at risk? And of course, at some point she will have to have the uterus removed as well for the remainder of her life, so she's not on immunosuppressants. Can you explain, having got to know the couple, why that was so important to them?
I think you probably have to speak to an individual woman, but I can reassure you that, you know, she went into this with a full knowledge of the issues that might arise, but also we are used to looking after women who have other organ transplants. And to me, probably having a uterus transplant or a womb transplant is no real difference than someone having other organs that are transplanted. And I think medical research does push boundaries, but I think in a positive way. And I think it's given her the opportunity, and for many women who, like Grace, were born without a womb, to give the opportunity to have a baby. So 1 in 5,000 women are born through no fault of their own without a womb. But it gives them hope to be able to, if they choose this pathway, not every woman will choose the same pathway, but at least it gives them hope and another choice.
Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, who was doing the rounds this morning, suggested that this could end up being on the NHS.
I mean, certainly that is something we would like to explore. At the moment, this has been charity funded for the transplants, but I certainly know that that's what Transplant UK would want to consider for the future. But clearly that has to be political decisions.
Yeah, because there's some people contacting the show this morning and saying, well, you know, I've been waiting 2 years for a knee operation. Yeah. I've been waiting for a transplant that would save my life. Why should a couple like this be given this kind of treatment on the NHS? It does raise ethical questions, doesn't it?
I can see that point of view, but just again to reassure you and your viewers that the transplant itself was charity funded. Doctors like myself gave up our time and our free time to care, and so it wasn't taking away any care from somebody else. So they didn't. You know, it wasn't someone else was delayed because of this.
The other ethical dilemma, Brian, is this idea that maybe men transitioning to be a trans woman might want a womb. There's been some research of this in other countries. Can you picture a time? And the charity that's funded this has said categorically on their website that is not something we endorse in the foreseeable future, they say. But can you see a time when men might be able to receive a womb and then give birth, biological male?
I can't see that in any near future, both in the UK or worldwide.
Yeah, the hormonal implications, you have to. You fancy it, Andrew? Look on his face.
How for the baby, just the same as any other baby. I mean, is she? What's it going to make a difference to her life? Do you think, knowing that she's the first ever in this country to be born in this way?
I mean, there have been other firsts. For example, the first IVF baby, and so I wouldn't imagine that she will have a lovely, fulfilling life with great parents, and I wish only the very best for her.
And maybe another baby.
We have to wait and see.
A little sister, a little brother?
We have to wait and see.
You're up for doing it again, if they're up for it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
It was. Did you know it was on the front page of the paper this morning? Like, when did you see this and realise what a big story it was?
I have to say, as a doctor, probably a bit naive, did not anticipate this was going to be such an enormous story, but obviously clearly delighted and very respectful that they've chosen to go public with their story.
Because originally they wanted to remain anonymous, didn't they? What do you think changed that, the decision on their part? Do you have any idea why they then said, we don't mind? Because it was a success story, presumably.
I genuinely don't know. But really supportive.
It's because I'm interested in the figure you gave, 1 in 5,000 women without a womb. This will be a great encouragement to those women who read this story and think, that could potentially be me. That's a very good reason to go public with this story, I think.
I think so. And I think that, you know, clearly there are some women who are born without a womb, but other women might have lost their womb due to cancer or other conditions. And this also gives them a hope of potentially carrying a pregnancy.
Yeah. Just take me back to the moment then when the caesarean was performed at Queen Charlotte's Hospital around the corner, and you have that quiet, don't you, in a delivery suite like that in the ward, in the surgical room when you're delivering the baby. What was that like when she emerged?
It was really important that it was a quiet moment. Yeah. And you can imagine in a big room where there are lots of people, actually noise control was really important, but it was really special. It was that special, magical moment, and it was really delightful.
And did they know it was a girl or boy, or did they not know?
I can't remember, actually.
I'd be fascinated to know.
Yeah, I imagine they probably didn't mind either way at that time.
I don't think that was
all
important.
They had been through, they would just be happy and grateful. Well, it is a miracle of modern medicine, Bryony, and it's
and you're part of it.
I'm a very small part of a very large team.
Well, you had a pretty key job on that day.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you so much. We'll let you go back to work now. She's looking after more women just around the corner this morning. Amazing, isn't it? Right, don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a chilly start with some frost and fog in places, but this will clear relatively quickly, leading to another fine day. Lots of sunshine, but it is going to be cloudier in some spots, particularly around any North Sea coast. The northeast of Scotland, for example, could see quite a cloudy day. Shetland, Orkney could see that cloud stick around, but elsewhere there should be plenty of sunshine, perhaps some fair weather cloud bubbling up into the afternoon, but remaining largely dry and feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine too. It's likely we'll see highs of around 17, possibly even 18 or 19 degrees, particularly across the Highlands. So it'll be a warm evening to end the day, but with clear skies and light winds overnight, things are soon set to turn a little bit chillier. So those temperatures will dip away across Scotland, but still remaining fairly cloudy across Shetland, Orkney and around any North Sea coasts. A little bit clearer across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but starting to turn chilly as soon as that sun goes down. And fairly similar elsewhere across central parts of England, Wales and across the south too. A fairly calm end to the day. It's likely we'll see quite a nice sunset. Then through the course of the night, we'll continue to see light winds and fairly clear skies. So once again, it's likely we'll see some patchy mist and fog and likely to see some frost, particularly in rural spots. And we'll see a return of that low cloud, likely to see some sea fog once again returning to those North Sea coasts. And it's here where there'll be quite a murky start by the morning. But away from here, under those clear skies, we could see some patchy frost, but it's largely going to be a slightly milder night compared to the one just gone. Then through the course of Wednesday, once again a murky start across eastern areas, some of that low cloud perhaps pushing into central areas, parts of London, but once again through the morning into the afternoon, burning back quite nicely, but perhaps just lingering on once again across those eastern shorelines. But elsewhere, plenty of sunshine, remaining dry, highs of 18, possibly 19 or 20 degrees Celsius across Scotland. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For a chance to win a motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Look.
It's 11 o'clock on Tuesday the 8th of April, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
A womb transplant miracle, and did you just see that interview? Amy Davidson has made history by being the first baby born by a transplant womb. Her mum, Grace, is literally over the moon.
Hope is so important. Hope for this, like that this could be a realistic option for them, perhaps. And just how much it's given me, I would just hopefully share what it's been like for me.
World exclusive, we spoke to consultant obstetrician Bryony Jones, who delivered baby Amy.
The day was special. It felt special because it was the accumulation of years of work from the Womb Transplant UK team, and I was incredibly honoured to be part of that team.
Prince Harry is in the Court of Appeal over the government's decision to scrap security for his family in the UK.
And global market turmoil, the trade war between China and America escalates, but what impact will it have on Britain? We'll have all the latest.
And Birmingham is drowning in rubbish. The bin workers' strikes in Birmingham enter their 5th week. Jack.
Things are moving forward. That's what Unite say after negotiations yesterday. Still no deal, but they're meeting again today as across the city hundreds of people are coming to mobile collections like the one behind me to try and get rid of their rubbish.
Boris under attack. An ostrich charged the former Prime Minister who was visiting a wildlife park in Texas with his family. Just take a look at this.
You think it's very aggressive.
And Meghan Markle has a new podcast. That's right, another one. The Duchess of Sussex Confessions of a Female Founder is out today. Brenda in Bristol, what do you think?
Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this.
So we're going to go right back to the Royal Courts of Justice, where a judge is hearing from Prince Harry's barrister over his appeal over the government's decision to refuse to pay for his security, armed security, when he's in Britain.
So, my lord, I was just going through this section, which starts now on page 835. It's the heading just above paragraph 52, to say that you can see from the pages that follow the interpretive exercise that the Supreme Court did. It goes all the way up to paragraph 74, but I wonder if we could just stop off and look at paragraph 69 first of all. Paragraph 69 is the one that I've identified to you as the basis for the propositions I've given you about Hemati. It is on page 100 and 840. If I could just ask you to read that before I make some points about it.
Is that the one that you referred to in relation to 3 or 4 of your propositions?
Yes, my lord.
69, let's
yes.
read it.
Yes.
I mean, you can read it out. It always helps me if you read it out. I know that.
Certainly. I'm conscious that my lords may get tired of hearing my voice,
well,
but...
except that it's only 10 lines, and it may be important for everybody else in court
yes.
to hear what you're saying.
There can also be no doubt that in this jurisdiction, a policy statement such as Chapter 55 of the EIG has significant legal effects. I have referred to these at paras 50 to 51 above. In broad terms, and as Lord Justice Laws explained in Nadaraja, where a public authority has issued a promise or adopted a practice which represents how it proposes to act in a given area, the law requires that promise or practice to be honoured, unless there is good reason not to do so. Moreover, the court is the final arbiter of what a policy means. There's then a reference to Kambadzi and Mandalia, which we'll come on to look at. It is also well established that compliance with such a policy is enforceable by individuals before the courts. So, my lords...
So you say that's very clear and comprehensive.
Clear and comprehensive in, first of all, setting out the Nadaraja principle, setting out the court as the final arbiter, but then it's a nil return, if you like, in terms of Hopkins. There's nothing there about a general presumption. And this would be the sort of case to say it, because it's an immigration case. And as we'll come on to see, the respondents say that planning and immigration are examples of where the presumption that they rely upon bites. So nothing here. And as I said in response to a question earlier, my lords, it wasn't even cited in argument, let alone referred to by the court. The next authority is Mandalia, which is 2015, and it's Bundle 1, Tab 12, and electronically it should be page 475.
This is earlier, isn't it?
I'm so sorry, my lord, I didn't...
Earlier.
Yes, this is 2015. And again, just as a reminder, I'm citing it for court being the final arbiter and also the no Hopkins. Again, if I could just take the facts from the head note on page 407.
Well, we're leaving the court case where Prince Harry is fighting to get the state to pick up the bill for his security, but we've got lots of texts and emails coming in, I think.
We have. A little sort of esoteric, one might say, some of the legal jargon there. I think you have to really understand that topic to know what she was talking about.
Yeah, I didn't have a clue what she was talking about.
No change there, then. But anyway, let's see what you have been saying at home. Grumpy Bear, good morning. This is about these record numbers of boat crossings that we've had this year, and particularly a busy morning. 400
today are crossing the channel.
Well,
400.
Grumpy Bear has said if the government don't do something drastic with the boat crossings, the people of our country have had enough. Just take them back to France and just hope you're not a sailor in trouble because of all the lifeboats which are taxiing the illegal immigrants. It makes my blood boil.
And we've seen the controversy of the Royal National Lifeboat Institute going in to help the migrants. What else can they do? They can't let them drown.
Yeah. Katie says stop the taxiing, and unfortunately there would be more deaths, but this might encourage fewer people to come here. If you don't have documents, send them straight back. That's the idea of a deterrent. But if you already know that you might actually lose your life on that crossing and that isn't a sufficient deterrent, that's not going to work, is it? Like, there needs to be a very clear deterrent for people to want to come here.
We've now got a real treat for you now, because it is the launch of the Green Party's local election campaign in Warwickshire. They have two leaders. They share the responsibilities, and so let's have a listen to them.
In how their local government is run, and we strongly oppose that decision. But even with this disappointment, the elections coming up on the 1st of May are incredibly important. Labour have had 9 months to prove themselves, and yet they failed at every turn. We, like so many others, were hoping that the change in government would make things better after so many years of the Conservatives' cruel and short-sighted cuts to our public services. We've said all along that we'll congratulate Labour and support them where we think they're heading in the right direction, and we'll push them and call them to be more ambitious where we think they're getting it wrong. Needless to say, we've not done as much congratulating as we would have liked since they came to government.
We were hoping for some positive change, and that just isn't happening. And with every day, it's looking less and less likely that it will. Cutting the winter fuel allowance, refusing to end the 2-child benefit cap, slashing benefits for disabled people. Labour are making choices that increase poverty, making things so much worse for so many people, and burdening councils with an ever-increasing demand for services on only a fraction of the financial support they need. After 14 years of failure from the Conservatives, voters are telling us that this Labour government has been a crushing disappointment, unwilling to equip councils with what they need to actually support our communities. So we know that in these local elections, where they're still happening, many people are looking for something different.
So which way should people turn? Well, on the one hand, we have the far right, Reform, a party that uses the politics of fear to divide our communities and whose policies are explicitly designed to only benefit a small number of the very richest. Reform is a party that wants to privatise our NHS. They want to halt action that would create a healthy, livable environment. They'd let rich oligarchs buy up our democracy while sowing division in society instead of making the case for the investment that our public services need. And most importantly for these local elections, Reform has no track record of delivering at any level of government. Reform's trying to make gains on the back of a weak and lacklustre political old guard. Yes, they shout the loudest, I think we can all agree on that. But when it comes to getting anything done, offering any real solutions, Reform's rhetoric evaporates, and they will soon crash back to reality and disappear into the ether like UKIP and the BNP before them.
Meanwhile, there are people like our councillors up and down the country, some of whom are with us today, but most of whom are out knocking on doors, speaking to voters right now. The over 800 Green councillors across England and Wales, who between them already represent millions of people in this country, who are working hard every day to make a difference for their communities, working all year round on practical solutions, not just turning up on the doorstep at election time. These people are offering hope, not division, community, not chaos.
You already heard from Zach about our tours around the country, our visits to places where we're hoping to gain even more Green councillors. Because we know that when people vote Green, they get the real change that we so desperately need. That's why we've seen Greens continually grow our councillor numbers, growing year on year, election after election. In fact, we're the only party in the UK to have grown our number of councillors every year for the last 7 years, because voters are liking what they see and voting for more of it. Take housing, which is so important to every one of us. Here in Warwick District, where we lead the council, we've invested millions in making council homes warmer and cheaper to run. And in Mid-Suffolk, in my area, another Green-run council, in 1 year we've prevented hundreds of people from becoming homelessness by building new affordable housing.
And in Bristol, where I'm an MP, the Green-run council is building hundreds of new, warm, affordable homes on brownfield sites near the city centre so that people can live in the heart of their communities. They're also investing in making improvements to council homes so that residents can be proud of where they live. Our councillors are embedded in their communities, listen to the needs and concerns of their residents, their neighbours, and take action to improve their quality of life every day.
We feel so proud to lead this party full of brilliant people like these, like you, a party which has something meaningful and worthwhile to offer, which isn't stuck in the past, trotting out the same old, tired policies which didn't work then and won't work now, which already represents people, millions of people, in cities, on the coast, in market towns and rural communities. Is experienced, principled, hard-working, and will always put our communities at the heart of everything we do.
We know people are struggling, and that many councils are struggling to help them, close to breaking point after 14 years of Conservative cuts, followed by the crushing disappointment of a new Labour government failing to support them. At a time when local councils are facing major reorganisation and underfunding, Green councillors will fight for a healthy local democracy and the rights of residents to shape their own communities. These local elections are important. We can see that Reform is throwing everything at them because they want to take advantage of voters feeling, understandably, let down by both Labour and the Conservatives. But we are here to say that voters have another choice, a positive choice. Instead of one of the tired old parties, or worse, a party that is divisive, dishonest, in disarray, that wants to tear things down, not build communities up, and has no track record of delivering, we are offering a party that listens, that responds to the needs of communities. We're offering a party that's growing, has increased its councillors nearly 5-fold over the last 5 elections, and that's part of running over 40 councils across the country. A party that delivers and helps make life better.
We know that politics in this country isn't providing people with what they need, that disillusionment is high and morale is low. But up and down the country, Greens are making a difference. We are smashing through records, getting more and more hard-working councillors elected, taking votes from the old, tired parties to offer something different, the positive change that's so desperately needed. And with the support of voters on the 1st of May, we will be making that difference, offering that positive change to even more communities. Thank you.
So that is the Green Party launching its local election manifesto in Warwick today. As you would expect, we covered the launch of all the major parties. So we will... we're now going to cross to a Labour MP. He was also the chairman of the Commons Defence Select Committee, Tan Desley, to talk about the Armed Forces Covenant. Tan, morning to you. Before we ask you about the Armed Forces Covenant, to explain what it is, can you just tell us what you make of Adrian Ramsey, who's the co-leader of Reform UK, who's just branded Reform UK far right?
Co-leader of the Green Party.
Co-leader of the Green Party, forgive me, yeah. Do you agree with that?
Well, look, we know that the policies of reform are very right-wing, and that is something that is, I think, to their detriment, but also I hope that people will not be taken in by that. What we need is a plan for change. We know that there needs to be systemic change, and that's what the government is setting out to do.
I'm interested, I genuinely don't think that necessarily the terms right and left are even meaningful anymore in 2025, Tan. I don't know what you mean, so just elaborate, if you don't mind, for a minute on that. What do you mean by the fact that they are clearly right-wing?
Well, Bev, I think whether it's in terms of somebody's on the left or the right of the spectrum, I think for those of us who are engaged heavily in politics, I think we can understand the implications of when somebody is very right-wing or indeed
Give me an example then of a policy, because I am also involved in politics. Give me an example of a policy then, just anything that you would consider to be right-wing these days.
Well, look, if we take the left and right wing, you had the Green Party there. So in terms of them being very left wing, they would, for example, favour more of an open doors policy to immigration. Somebody who is very right wing would want more of a fortress Britain, so to restrict immigration completely. Somebody who would be more centrist would want to ensure that we have an immigration policy which benefits our country, and that we take into account the needs of businesses, the needs of the local community, the needs of our health and social care system, and much more besides.
OK, so where would you sit on that particular debate? Because I think the majority of the people watching at home would like us to have much stricter border control.
Well, look, I think the government has set out that it will be having a policy whereby we have control of our borders, we have managed migration, we look into the needs of businesses, of our elderly and vulnerable communities, into whether it's our health and education, our social care sector and others. So we need to make sure that the immigration policies of the government benefit our country.
Which sounds like the right-wing definition you've just given us, Tan.
No, I think in terms of for them, they want to completely stop or significantly curtail. I think we need to be mindful that we want to grow our economy. The number one mission of the government is to grow our economy. We also want to make sure that we hold the debate in a very sensible and sensitive manner, rather than just go after sound bites, which is what often Reform and others do.
Let's talk
without
to you,
having the solutions.
We will talk to you about the Defence Covenant, I promise you. But can I just ask you, first of all, tariffs? You talk about this government is committed to growth. We've been whacked with 10% tariffs, 25% on our steel, 25% on our car industry. Are you one of those Labour MPs who feels who is urging the Prime Minister to get a lot tougher with the United States and maybe even to retaliate?
Well, Andrew, a trade tariff war does not benefit anybody, including the US. So my plea to the US administration is that this is not the path that we should tread. By doing this, by having an all-out trade war, that will make things more expensive, so there will be inflationary pressures. But then also what it will lead to is that things for consumers will become a lot more expensive. And it will also hurt jobs in the US as well as here in the UK. So what the approach that I would like the government to take is similar to what the Prime Minister is currently doing. We should be ensuring that we keep very close with our American allies, but also with other allies across the globe. We need to ensure that we take measures to protect our businesses, to protect our industries. And if there is no further movement, then, as the government has said, all options are on the table. But I don't think we should be doing anything to immediately exacerbate the trade tariff war.
Now, you're chairman of the Defence Select Committee. Just explain to us what the Armed Forces Covenant is, Tan, and why you think it's not being respected and honoured in the way it should be.
Well, look, our armed forces have an incredible service to our country. They take it upon themselves to protect our country, and often they have to make huge sacrifices along the way. Military service can be very, very difficult, demanding, dangerous, and that is why the Armed Forces Covenant is there, is to make sure that our brave servicemen and women, their families and veterans are not put at a disadvantage. But what our Defence Committee inquiry into the Armed Forces Covenant found was that there was inconsistent implementation of the Covenant, and there is also a lack of understanding, not just in the wider society, but also amongst our service personnel about the benefits. So I think that what the government needs to do is to make sure that they comply with their manifesto commitment, which was to ensure that the covenant is fully brought into law, so that fuller, greater implementation of the Armed Forces Covenant, but also to make sure that none of our Armed Forces personnel are disadvantaged in any way because of their duty.
Which kind of makes me, I'm putting myself in the minds of some of our viewers here, Tan, and they will also be saying, if we can find £5 million a day to put up asylum seekers, refugees in this country in hotels, why can't we look after our veterans with more care? Because so many of them end up homeless.
Well, that's why it's incredibly important. As I said, the duty on us, and look, the main question for us, Bev, should be that our armed forces personnel, they do extraordinary things to keep us and our country safe. The question for us is, are we doing enough in our duty to protect and support them? And at the moment, I would say the answer is no. So what we need to make sure is that the current laws as they stand at the Covenant is properly implemented. Then we also need to make sure that the government actually extends the duty, that's the legal duty for due regard for our armed forces personnel, their families and veterans, and ensure that that is actually extended to other government departments and devolved administrations. Because what we found was various examples where, for example, in healthcare, if an armed forces personnel, if they're moving with their families from, say, Scotland to South England, or from abroad to back to the UK, often they're at the back of the queue for their NHS treatment. Sometimes they cannot find places for their children in terms of schooling. They also have issues, for example, with gaining SEN provision, that's the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities provision as well, and that's just not good enough. And by the way, we had one example of an evidence given whereby military personnel were telling us that often they would do a major mission halfway up the country in order to get their NHS dentist appointments because they found it so difficult to register for an NHS dentist when they moved to another part of the country.
OK, can I just ask you one more question before you go? We're watching the King and Queen Camilla here in Italy with David Lammy beside them. David Lammy has been a very vocal advocate of the UK paying reparations for what he sees as sort of former historical sort of crimes of colonialism, actually. Is he the right person for this job on the global stage at a moment like this, Tan?
Well, look, I think the Foreign Secretary is doing an incredible job. I think over the last few months, he has basically not just put in the effort here in the UK, but to make sure that we strengthen our alliances across the globe. And it is right and proper that the Foreign Secretary should be there in Italy. And by the way, Italy are one of our close and trusted allies. The Defence Committee, for example, did a report on the Global Combat Air Programme, GCAP, and that is a joint initiative between Italy, Japan and the UK to build the next generation of fighter jets. So while we are very, very proud of the King and the Queen for the service that they undertake on behalf of the country across the globe, so too the Foreign Secretary should be doing his part by supporting the royal family in their duties.
OK, all right, Tan, great to see you. Thank you so much. Join us again, won't you? The Chair of the Defence Committee there, Tan Desi, Labour MP for Slough.
Now, if you're listening on the radio, the King and Queen have just been inspecting a guard of honour. Did you notice that they were walking down the concrete steps? The Queen was hanging on to the King. Did you notice?
He looked like the more robust of the two.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. I was watching thinking, oh, I wouldn't fancy those steps in high heels.
Yeah.
But yeah, he looks well,
he does.
actually, given that he's been having cancer treatment.
Yeah. So he's standing with we think that's the Italian president. And they're playing some military music. This is day 2 of the state visit to Italy. Day 3 will be their 20th wedding anniversary. I see some Republicans. We've got the panel with us. Some Republicans. We've got Mark Field here, former Foreign Office Minister, and Nigel Nelson. You are a Republican, aren't you? Ish.
No, I'm not.
Some Republicans saying, "Oh, blimey, they're having their 20th wedding anniversary holiday in Italy on the taxpayer." I think they could probably think of other things they'd rather do on their 20th wedding anniversary, Nigel.
Yeah, I'm not sure that this has worked for them.
Yes, it is. State visit, isn't it?
It is. It is hard, and there's a lot of work and speeches and.
Oh, come on! They're in the
people...
sunshine. They're going to get a lovely lunch. They'll have a glass of wine. I mean, Camilla probably wants to go off and have a little nap, but I imagine she likes a siesta. It's not really work, though, is it, Mark?
It's true. I would assume this programme, of all things, would be the staunchest of monarchists.
Oh, I am. No, listen, I have a renewed appreciation for anything which distinguishes this country in a world where we seem to be reaching for hegemony the whole time. Believe me, I'm on board with all of this. Yeah. But I'm just saying, it's not really work, is it?
Yeah. It's very hard. Having actually been a Foreign Office Minister and in a small way done these sorts of trips, it's pretty full on, actually. You've got a big programme, you go from one meeting to the next. I know that the King, I'm sure, is very, very assiduous with his paperwork, makes sure he does a preparation beforehand. You get these big packs beforehand so you know who you're seeing and what you're trying to achieve at a meeting.
I've covered royal tours as a journalist, and it's exhausting.
Yeah, it is. It is an on-the-go the whole time. What do we think, gentlemen, that Prince Harry has chosen to pitch up at court today? He's not giving evidence. He doesn't need to be there today. This is to do with his ongoing battle with the government over paying for his security. Is he deliberately upstaging the King? It's not as if he wouldn't know that today the King was going to be on a state visit.
Well, I mean, I don't think he should have turned up. If you don't need to be there, what is the point of doing it? Because all that does is encourage the film crews, photographers. It puts him in the news where it wouldn't be otherwise. I don't know if it's deliberate. If it is deliberate, it's shameful.
And also, I thought he was supposed to care about the planet, Mark. This will be another private jet over here, no doubt.
I don't know. I mean, it's easy to have a go at Prince Harry. I mean, I think he wants to stay relevant, stay in the headlines, and I think all of us know in our hearts where this is all going to end up. He'll be coming back to the UK at some point in the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, that's controversial.
Oh, that's an interesting prediction.
That's the thought, anyway.
That's not in your book.
I don't talk about too much about
you don't at all. That's so true.
So you could have slightly predicting perhaps the demise of his marriage at some point?
I don't know, and I wouldn't want to predict one way or another. But I think
well, I'll make a prediction for you. He'll be back.
Yeah, I suspect he will.
Without her.
I think most
without her.
And we're a very forgiving nation. I think people, even if they didn't like him, might welcome him back. If he
leaves his wife behind, yeah, I think they will welcome him back.
Nobody wants to see the end of a family.
No.
It's never a plan A.
Exactly
We wouldn't want to see that. There are
quite right,
children
Bev.
involved in that relationship.
Now, we want to talk of some stories here, Jen, but this will get you, Bev, going. Labour MPs want digital ID to get a grip on illegal migration.
Well, blow me down.
Yeah.
Who saw that coming over the horizon?
And, of course...
And guess who's behind it? Tony Blair.
David Cameron's government got rid of the ID card.
We did.
Which was almost upon us.
It was, yeah. It's a funny thing. I was always... I'm a libertarian by heart. I'm very much against ID cards.
Yeah.
Don't then say but, Mark.
No, I am beginning to think, though, that the public out there, particularly with so much technology playing such a part in day-to-day life, and I think the other thing that, of course, much of the British public think, if we're going to properly protect our borders, people having an ID card is the way forward. Now, I have still...
You started her
I
off
have
now,
my
Mark.
doubts.
Oh, my God.
All of the reasons...
I think Bev, for many of the public out there, their view is, listen, if we had this bit of ID, it's a way in which the million or more, or we don't know how many illegal migrants can be brought...
Hang on, we've had 750,000 legal migrants. That's much more of a problem than the less than 100,000.
With all their paperwork.
With all their paperwork.
I'm not surprised that Tony Blair has come back on this one, but he was banging on about
money
it
to be made.
when he was in government. I object to the idea of any card, whether it's digital or on paper, that gives me permission to walk around my own country. I've got enough ID on me anyway. If you want to do an ID card, and forget about immigration, because I can't see it would make a lot of difference. If you want to do an ID card, make it something we all want. So if it's a digital ID card that combines your passport, your driving licence, gives you a load of benefits, then I can understand it. But in that case, it should be voluntary.
But it should be real benefits rather than the benefit being that you don't have your life being made unbearable and difficult because you don't have that bit of ID.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, exactly. It might allow us a little more convenience, let's say, if you're applying for a mortgage, or sometimes there is some onerous paperwork that needs to be done. It might be convenient, but the risks of being surveilled, of being controlled, and as Nigel says, of not being allowed to walk down your street, let's face it, without your phone, because that's what it will be. That is all of the reasons why you didn't want ID cards. Put that on steroids.
And that you have a technical offence is
Very briefly, Nigel, because you know the Labour Party much better than we do. How much support is there on the Labour benches for this?
Well, there's some, but I don't think it's actually a major issue. The support was back in Tony Blair's day when he was trying to introduce it.
Yeah.
And eventually...
David Blunkett is a huge advocate.
That's right, he was. And then several people in the Cabinet didn't like it. Then when it hit the House of Commons, there was a lot of worries for the reasons I'm talking about. Why do you have to carry a card just to wander around your own country? And then it disappeared. David Cameron was the one who actually put the final kibosh on it. Now it's come back, but it does seem to be Tony Blair behind it again. He's got an awful lot of influence in the Labour Party.
He certainly does.
And remember what a vocal advocate he was for your vaccine passports to get you in and out of restaurants? That was Tony Blair. Why? Because he was priming you for this.
I told you he'd started it. I told you.
He was setting you up for this, and luckily, not that many people fell for it. So, anyway, we will be here to tell you what is right and what is wrong. Right, Sophia Wensley's here with your news. Here she is. Thanks, guys.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Your headlines at 11:32. The Duke of Sussex has arrived at the Royal Courts of Justice in London to appeal against his decision to downgrade his security arrangements while in the UK. Prince Harry is challenging a 2020 Home Office decision reducing his taxpayer-funded protection after stepping back as a full-time royal. Last February, a High Court judge upheld the decision, finding it rational. Harry's team, though, argues he was unfairly treated, lacking proper risk analysis. In other news, Donald Trump has called for calm despite trillions of dollars being wiped from global markets by his tariffs. The US president urged his critics to not be a panickin, coining a new phrase which he describes as based on weak and stupid people. It comes as European markets opened higher, with London's FTSE 100 rising in the first few minutes of trading this morning after several days of heavy losses. Meanwhile, China has vowed to fight to the end in response to Donald Trump's threat of an additional 50% tariff on Chinese imports. Overnight, the US president further escalated his rhetoric on trade with Beijing and the EU over tariffs.
With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. The European Union's been very bad to us. They don't take our cars, like Japan in that sense. They don't take our agricultural product. They don't take anything practically.
But Beijing's Commerce Ministry said it would never accept the blackmail nature of the US. Now, in other news, the Green Party is launching its local election campaign today. Speaking at the launch, the Green co-leaders, Carla Denyer and Adrian Ramsey, argued that voters across the country are looking for something different. Ramsey took aim at Reform UK, describing them as the far right, and accused them of using the politics of fear to divide our communities, and whose policies are explicitly designed to only benefit a small number of the very richest. And the King and Queen have arrived at the Quirinal Palace to meet the Italian Prime Minister. Charles and Camilla are in Rome for the start of a 4-day state visit, which will celebrate ties between the UK and Italy. The state visit was originally intended to include the Vatican, where the King had been due to attend a service in the Sistine Chapel, but that had been postponed because of the ill health of Pope Francis. Earlier, the King and Queen shared 3 new photographs marking their 20th wedding anniversary, which is tomorrow. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2738 and €1.1669 euros. The price of gold is £2,359 and 17 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,816 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Emily and Tom are here to tell us what's on the show this afternoon.
Oh, it's a royal extravaganza. Not only are we going to see the King and Queen touring Rome, the Colosseum of all places, we've also got the ongoing trial of what on earth is going to happen with regard to Harry's security.
And don't forget, on the very same day, Meghan's podcast has launched. I was having a little listen in the changing room while I was getting my hair and makeup done. It's as you would expect.
What?
Well,
terrible.
Corny and self-referential.
Scripted, self-referential, yes. Lots of laughing at things that aren't funny.
Yeah.
Now, I know I'm a giggler, but usually that is because I find something funny, whereas it's all very forced.
And isn't it about being a female founder of a business?
Yeah,
isn't it about how to run $1 billion business? She doesn't do that herself yet.
No, but that's what she wants now. She's gone
jam.
from philanthropist and potential presidential candidate
jam
to jam billionaire. I mean, it could happen for her. It could happen.
And where
there you go. Probably not the biggest news of the day, but it's quite fun.
Where does Harry fit in all this? Does he have any role left at all in this woman's life?
No, I don't think so.
Just being a dad?
Not in this type of thing.
Well, he's too busy with all of his court cases.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't
different
guess how many court cases he has going on right now, but one of them happening as we speak. But I'm interested in the Colosseum as well. I mean, what a marvellous building, a sort of testament to an ancient Rome that has long since passed. A building that was stripped of its marble as people went off to build their own houses in the centuries after.
Sorry, guys, we have to just interrupt you. We're going live to Rachel Reeves, who's speaking in the Comments.
If you can stand any more excitement.
it for the short term. Security for working people, renewal for Britain, that is our focus, and Mr Speaker, that is what this government will deliver.
Shadow Chancellor Mellström.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and could I thank the Right Honourable Lady for the advance notice of her comments. Mr Speaker, this is a time of great concern for millions of people up and down our country, for businesses, and as an open trading nation for our economy at large. Free trade has been the bedrock of prosperity for our country and many countries around the world for decades. It has raised billions out of poverty. Tariffs are the enemy of free trade, and we on this side of the House will do whatever we can to assist the government in getting those tariffs down. Having said that, of course, we will never cease becoming an effective opposition, vigorously holding them to account, not least on the disastrous decisions that they have taken already in respect of our economy. But we will be responsible when it comes to these matters, particularly where market sensitivities are engaged. Could I ask the Right Honourable Lady the following? Firstly, could she provide further details of the US negotiations, and specifically whether further meetings with Scott Bessent and others have been arranged that involve herself? Secondly, what areas beyond tariffs are being discussed in those negotiations? Thirdly, what sectors beyond cars and life sciences that the Right Honourable Lady made reference to are being considered for potential government support? And finally, could she update the House on what options there are for protecting sectors of the economy which may be affected by the dumping of goods as a consequence of trade diversion?
I'd like to thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for that response, and also for his offer to work constructively. I think that in my time as Shadow Chancellor, those moments when we can work constructively in the national interest, whether that was in the response to COVID or indeed in supporting Ukraine against the aggression of Russia, it is when this House is at its best, when we work together in the national interest. The Shadow Chancellor asked for further details in a number of areas. Discussions are ongoing across a range of government departments, including the Treasury, with the United States, and I will be meeting US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent shortly. Beyond tariffs, of course, we are discussing a range of different areas, but the focus is on reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade, with a particular focus on those sectors that are subject to the higher tariffs, because although the 10% tariffs are lower than many other countries around the world, and we welcome that, the additional tariffs on cars, on steel, and potentially on life sciences pose a real challenge to our country, because those are some of our biggest export markets. It's why we made the announcements that we made yesterday, but in those sectors, automotives, life sciences and steel, we will continue to take the action that is necessary, working in partnership with business and also with trade unions to make sure that we are addressing those issues. We are also using institutions like the British Business Bank, the National Wealth Fund and UK Export Finance to help businesses through these times. The Shadow Chancellor also mentioned concerns around dumping. We of course are working with international colleagues around the world to understand those implications, but our first priority is not to create more trade barriers, but to reduce the ones that exist today.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People up and down the country will be incredibly concerned about what Trump's trade war means for their living standards and for their communities as well. But at the same time, people want to show that Britain is not going to take Donald Trump's trade tariffs lying down. We welcome the Chancellor's announcement that the government will be working further and faster with our allies abroad, and I would ask the Chancellor to confirm that any new trade deals will be brought before this House for a vote before they are ratified. But, Mr. Speaker, at the same time, what I want to ask the Chancellor is whether, at the same time as working with our allies abroad to create new export markets, will the Chancellor and the government commit to a Buy British campaign as part of a broader national effort to encourage people to buy British here at home?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable lady for those questions. This is a time for pragmatism and cool heads, and not a Russia response. We are working closely with business. My right honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, announced in the House last week a call for evidence in terms of the response that business are looking for, because ratcheting up barriers to trade, ratcheting up tariffs will not be in our country's interest, whether that's in inflation or indeed for supply chains. So I think we do need to have cool heads and think about the national interest, not knee-jerk reactions. In terms of doing deals with other countries around the world, that is something we're very much focused on. There's the EU-UK summit on the 18th of May. We are hosting the Economic and Financial Dialogue with Minister Sitaraman coming to London today for those conversations, and those discussions are ongoing with a number of countries. Of course, any treaties would be brought forward for ratification by this House. In terms of buying British, I think everyone will make their own decisions. What we don't want to see is a trade war with Britain becoming inward-looking, because if every country in the world decided that they only wanted to buy things produced in their country, that is...
So, from the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who likes to take money away from you, we like to give it to you. So let's have a look at the Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize we've ever offered you. It's your chance to drive away with a brand new motorhome worth over £67,000. Here are all the details.
We're making the Great British Giveaway a getaway with a chance to win our biggest prize to date. You could be the proud owner of this Alneg Baron 560 motorhome worth over £67,000. Supplied brand new from Marquis Leisure, you could be exploring Great Britain and beyond this summer and making memories to last a lifetime. This motorhome comfortably sleeps four, has its own kitchen and bathroom spaces, and comes complete with all of the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle of this calibre. And that's not all, as we'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash so you can get started on your next adventure as soon as possible. For a chance to win a motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
So you could get in your motorhome, you don't have to queue at the airport, and you head straight to Europe. What's the weather like there?
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
A cold spell will affect eastern parts of Europe this week. Some areas could see temperatures 10 degrees below average. Rather showery at times across Madeira and Tenerife, with longer spells of rain later through the day. Largely dry, though, across Spain and Portugal, just perhaps the odd shower affecting Nice, Rome, Sardinia, and perhaps some shorelines of Greece. But otherwise largely settled, lots of sunshine around, but temperatures in the mid-teens. But we'll see more sunshine as we head through the week. Still rather showery across Tenerife, but temperatures improving to the mid to high teens by the time we reach Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, it's time for your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Plenty of sunshine yet again for most of us today, and in that sunshine it is going to feel relatively warm, especially towards the west. We still have high pressure firmly in control. This high pressure is going to stay in control for a little while yet, and it's this that's leading to all the settled weather that we've had of late. It's worth bearing in mind there is some cloud around, still affecting the far north of Scotland, and there's a bit more high-level cloud around compared to yesterday, so the sunshine may be a bit hazy, a bit milky at times, but on the whole, most of us having a decent amount of blue sky, and with that blue sky, it's going to feel relatively warm, especially towards the west. Highest temperatures peaking around 18, possibly 19 Celsius, a little bit fresher towards the east because of that wind coming in, albeit the wind's not especially strong. Like I said, there is some cloud across the far north of Scotland. That will continue as we go through into this evening. In fact, that cloud's going to edge a bit further southwards as we go overnight as well. But before then, lots of clear weather to end the day. day and start the night across much of Scotland, Northern Ireland and also England and Wales. Worth bearing in mind, with these clear skies, we will see some pockets of mist and fog developing as we go overnight, but they shouldn't cause too many problems. The other talking point will be the cloud that is going to spread down from the north, so across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, turning cloudier overnight, and down the eastern side of England as well. Some cloud, some low cloud, perhaps even some fog pushing its way in. Away from where we see the cloud, temperatures are going to take a bit of a drop, so particularly in rural spots, turning quite chilly through tomorrow morning, some frost in prone spots. As we go through tomorrow itself then, a bit of a cloudy start across some eastern parts, some low cloud, some fog. A lot of this will burn back as we go through the day, but some coastal parts of eastern England clinging onto that cloud, so staying pretty great here. Elsewhere though, lots of sunshine yet again, and in that sunshine feeling pretty warm. Temperatures similar to today, just a bit more of a breeze in the east and south.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
How do you feel about the NHS not looking after your data? Well, one advisor has warned that the NHS is exposed to cybercrime, and he joins us in the studio now. Andrew Jenkinson. Morning, Andrew.
Good morning. To the government. Tell us what's the problem.
There's two main problems, really. The first one is that the teams that are looking after security are dealing with symptoms and not the root cause, if you will. And secondly is that contracts are being given to tech giants that aren't looking after security. So the security teams are playing digital whack-a-mole, trying to keep up a pace with around 50 cyber attacks a day, 300 a week, 75,000 in the last several years. They just are getting burnt out.
How many of those cyber attacks are already on the NHS?
Quite a lot.
You know, don't you? You're not going to tell us.
I can't. But you've only got to go back to 2017 with the WannaCry scenario that literally...
Remind us what that was.
Well, it was a cyber attack that exploited servers and malware to literally stop the NHS in its tracks. So operations were cancelled, much the same as last year with the Synovis cyber attack.
Yeah.
You know, people's lives are at risk. We play this down a little bit, but people's lives are literally put on hold. Their operations, their critical operations are put on hold and delayed or cancelled. And the operational security team agree with everything we say, but their hands are tied because contracts are given out to tech giants, not in the UK, US tech giants. And as Willie Sutton said when he was arrested by the FBI, when posed the question, why do you keep robbing banks? He said, that's because that's where the money is. And today, people steal from the servers because that's where the data is. Unfortunately, we are not looking after the data. And data for healthcare records, you can't change it. It's not like a password. It's not like your credit card or bank account. You cannot change that.
It may sound a silly question. What do they do with the data? What do they want it for? How valuable is it?
Healthcare record data is the single most valuable, and they sell it on the dark web. So there are two things at play here. One, nation-states will hold it to ransom, and they typically get many millions of pounds for that. There was a report only last weekend by the NCSC, the National Cyber Security Centre, on 5.1 million ransom payments average for schools. And school data is nowhere near as valuable as NHS healthcare records.
So would that mean the government is paying a ransom to another country, let's say, in order to...
It's quite possible.
Would we ever know about that?
Not normally.
And that might be...
They wouldn't want us to know because it would encourage other people to do the same.
If we look at the overall, people have no idea about this. I spoke to a global economist very recently, and I said, are you factoring in cybercrime costs and losses? And they said, no, what is it? And I said, it's $10 trillion a year, 10% of the global GDP. That's not being factored into the fiscal studies and our own. So if we look at the compound costs of cyber security, because of these technology giants not securing our data, and it's not even kept here in the UK, we're paying at the front end for the technology, we're paying at the back end, when I say we, taxpayers, we're paying at the back end to try and get the data back.
Andrew Jenkinson, you are a man that we need in our life on this show. You can explain an awful lot,
and
but
you're coming back, because we need to talk about this a bit longer.
You're going to come back another day. I'm so sorry we've run out of time, but please come back. Emily and Tom are here. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Thank you.
Mamma mia! Molto
People have no idea.
bene. Yes, the King and the Queen are in Rome, Italy.
I have to, yeah.
We'll have
we help the FAA and the FBI.
We will indeed.
When the
Some
FAA...
Birmingham MPs seem to care more about an airport in Pakistan than they do about bin collections and the catastrophe that are parts of Birmingham right now. After your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a chilly start with some frost and fog in places, but this will clear relatively quickly, leading to another fine day. Lots of sunshine, but it is going to be cloudier in some spots, particularly around any North Sea coast. The northeast of Scotland, for example, could see quite a cloudy day. Shetland, Orkney could see that cloud stick around, but elsewhere there should be plenty of sunshine, perhaps some fair weather cloud bubbling up into the afternoon, but remaining largely dry and feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine too. It's likely we'll see highs of around 17, possibly 18 or 19 degrees, particularly across the Highlands. So it'll be a warm evening to end the day, but with clear skies and light winds overnight, things are soon set to turn a little bit chillier. So those temperatures will dip away across Scotland, but still remaining fairly cloudy across Shetland, Orkney and around any North Sea coasts. A little bit clearer across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but starting to turn chilly as soon as that sun goes down. And fairly similar elsewhere across central parts of England, Wales and across the south too. A fairly calm end to the day. It's likely we'll see quite a nice sunset. Then through the course of the night, we'll continue to see light winds and fairly clear skies. So once again, it's likely we'll see some patchy mist and fog and likely to see some frost, particularly in rural spots. And we'll see a return of that low cloud, likely to see some sea fog once again returning to those North Sea coasts. And it's here where there'll be quite a murky start by the morning, but away from here, under those clear skies, we could see some patchy frost, but it's largely going to be a slightly milder night compared to the one just gone. Then through the course of Wednesday, once again a murky start across eastern areas, some of that low cloud perhaps pushing into central areas, parts of London, but once again through the morning into the afternoon, burning back quite nicely, but perhaps just lingering on once again across those eastern shorelines. But elsewhere, plenty of sunshine, remaining dry, highs of 18, possibly 19 or 20 degrees Celsius across Scotland. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For a chance to win a motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.